remember where stupid iPad camera is off to the left. It should be centered in the beginning. Okay, got a few things here to show you about painting with light, but let's first define it again. Painting with light basically means that you are in an extremely dim area and you're bringing artificial light in to light the scene. Now, it can be all sorts of things, but traditionally, photographers initially did this for the look and for the fact that they didn't have a huge dish light. If they're out on location and they wanted to photograph a barn, an old decrepit falling apart barn at sunset, they probably did photograph it at sunset or near it, took a look at it and said, yeah, that's a really good shot. But you know something? About 10 minutes, 15 after the sun sets, the sky's still lit. I'd like to get back in there and rephotograph the barn with the sky looking like that, where it's much darker, but I gotta light the barn. Now they have a little dinky flash, but they know very well that to encompass the entire barn building, they're too far away, and the flash is only gonna light up a little piece of the barn. So initially, people would bring out, and one of the most common things that they used to bring were these 6-volt lanterns, you know, that have a hand grip. It's basically a monster flashlight with a big dish light on the front, runs off a 6-volt battery. It weighs a shit. That basically could be taken out on location. And as long as you had a long enough shutter speed, and here we're talking that sometimes shutter speeds go for 2-3 minutes at least. The photographer could trigger the shutter, then go over to the barn and literally start painting the side of the barn with this torch. You're painting the light onto the barn, if you will. It took a lot of trial and error to do that sort of thing. Maybe you're moving the torch too fast, so it was dim. Maybe you made the painting strokes real slow and it ended up being way overexposed. There were a lot of things that you had to try out before you finally got it down. Then they got the idea, well, wait a minute, why don't I make part of the barn green? And so they would paint one section of the barn in white and then very quickly put on a green gel and paint the rest. Right? And that's where we started getting into shots that were sort of away from reality. And if you go on YouTube, YouTube will give you plenty of tutorials on painting with light. But if you Google painting with light, and among those examples, this original idea of painting with light has not been as popular with the average person because it takes a lot of trial and error. So, but instead what they're doing is they're drawing figures, fantastic things in the air, outlining things with flashlights and all sorts of lights. So I'm going to show you some examples of the tools that you can use for this. You need to be able to stabilize your camera. Now, if you can mount it on a tripod because you have one. If you're on a cell phone, you've made a tripod adapter. We talked about those in class. So you can mount it on that. Then you have to be able to set a long exposure time. Now on standard, moderately expensive point and shoots and DSLRs even, you can set a timed exposure up to 30 seconds. That's not bad. And you could probably get this assignment done easily with that. If you have a cell phone, your built-in software or even the third-party software that you have now may not allow you to go as long as 30 seconds. Sometimes the software is not intended for painting with light. And so it tops out at about the longest exposure is about 1 second. And that's way too short. Not only because the light is dim, because you have no chance to paint in 1 second. Anything, really. You need a minimum probably of 10 seconds, especially if you're twirling something like Christmas tree lights or what have you in front of the camera. If your exposure is like 3, 4, 5 seconds, you won't even be able to make a full circle of light trails before the shutter closes again. Now, I've got some recommendations for software for cell phones. Now, I don't have Android, and I'm not all that familiar with that operating system, but I do have a short movie that I am going to post the link to up on Leia. And if those of you with Android phones can follow the link and watch the movie, it's about a minute and a half long, going over some of the software that you could download from the Play Store and use for this assignment. If you have an iPhone, I have certainly one recommendation that's been used before. The app is free. It's specifically meant for light painting. They used to charge, they no longer do. And it's Glowee, Glowee, Glowee. Go find it on the iPhone store and download it. Glowee can be used 2 different ways. When you first start the app, you're going to see 2 icons on the screen. One is a camera, and if you touch that, you now are going to be using your cell phone as a camera, and you have the choice of going as long as 10 seconds or shorter, and I would suggest 10 seconds as a start. So right away, the app solves the problem of not being able to set a long enough exposure. But 2, the other icon, and I can't remember exactly what it looks like. It's not a camera. But if you press that icon, it turns your cell phone into a light source and turns your screen multicolors. It can be programmed to go through various colors. It can be programmed to show text in various colors on screen so that you can do text writing. I don't have it set up to demonstrate it right now, but it's sort of an all-in-one package for this assignment. Now, there is another one that I used to recommend, which worked out quite well, but they've completely revamped it. And I'm not sure how to get a still image out of it. I can get a GIF or a GIF, that's how you pronounce it. I'll let you investigate it. If you can get a still image out of it, and I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, it's also an excellent app. Also because as the exposure is going on, it builds up the image. So literally, if you're not alone, if it's a friend of yours, and that's fine, if it's your brother or sister sharing quarantine, they can be the ones twirling the light and you're behind the camera. And with this particular app called Pablo, P-A-B-L-O, I'm not sure if it's on the Android side. You can check it out. You could be watching the image build up and you can cut off the exposure just when you like, or you can see where the mistake is. Whoops, we went a little too long, or you're not spinning it fast enough. And that, for instance, is a common problem with people. Like, we used to take them down to the small studio in the professional area, close the door so we could dim the lights way down. You don't need to be in total darkness, just dim, so that the artificial light you bring in, whatever it may be, is the main source of light here. And we did the assignment in there, although some people went out and did it on their own and actually came up with better, as is always the case with each assignment. We try to shoot most of them in-house. Of course, that no longer is possible. But you're always free to do it on your own or with the help of friends. as long as you're the photographer, and they're being directed by you, it's your photograph. We found that people who were twirling Christmas tree lights, you had to make it at a certain speed. It couldn't be too slow. For instance, I'll show you. I've got a bundle of Christmas tree lights here. These are outdoor lights, the blue LEDs. Now, if you had them in your hand and this was hooked up to an extension cord, and you decided what I'm going to do is walk from left to right, twirling these so that we'll have circles across the screen. If you twirl them relatively slow, you may find that the blue doesn't come out because literally the light trails are a bit overexposed and the color's been lost to pure white. The solution is to spin them faster. Now, of course, in the confines of our small studio, that could be a little dangerous, and occasionally people got clipped. Now, these are not the ideal solution, although they work. Look, they got to be plugged in. I'm out of my forest and I want to do this. I need a long extension cord, sort of ties me down. There is a variation on these that you might, you can't now, but you could find pharmacies, dollar stores and so forth around Christmas and soon after. And they're called fairy lights. And they have very thin, it's not robust like this, but they are LEDs with a thin cable between them. But instead of a plug, they end with a battery pack, like 2 AA's and an on-off switch. And they're not very expensive. They're about 10 bucks. You can get somewhat more expensive ones, but you know, 8 to 10 bucks gets you a string. So you can take them anywhere. They have their own power source. And you can twirl them carefully. If you happen to have some at home, just get some good batteries. Hopefully you've got them, and dig them out of the closet. Unless, of course, your Christmas tree's still up, because you don't feel like putting it up and taking it down every year. I do have to remind you that grab the thing not by the battery pack to twirl it. That is going to cause it to break right at the battery pack. The wire, you're going to have a short. We saw that happen. Grab the battery pack and about 1 inch of the cord beyond it, and then twirl. Now, these are not robust things, so it still could bust after some use. But you could also drape them on yourself. Same thing with the heavy-duty ones there. And during the exposure, just walk slowly left, right, and further away, and you'll be, if you drape them around your shoulders, you'll be lit up here. Your face, which is fairly light, will show. If you move at a certain speed, you'll get ghost images of yourself. Okay. Now, I must tell you that one of the things, and I just remembered that you shouldn't do when you're using an artificial light source is get between the camera and the light source in most cases, because you block the light. Like, go back to the example of the photographer painting the side of the barn. We normally would think of holding that right on in front of us and going like this. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get yourself as a silhouette, the back of you facing the camera. So you got to do it at an angle like this to paint things. Now, there's nothing wrong with a silhouette. I had some really good results from students who had an artificial light source of some sort, where the back of them were facing the camera, and they lit up an area. And yes, we did get a silhouette, and it was kind of cool. This is an area for experimentation. Keep trying different things, and see what happens. All you need is a fairly dark room. If you're by yourself, you can close the drapes up completely, and they're heavy duty drapes. That might even do it during the day. If you have a basement, you could do it in there. Now be aware that if you're twirling things, you could end up hitting things. And for whatever you do, don't play with fire in the house. I know it sounds stupid, but I'm just letting you know, because I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Show you Christmas tree lights. By the way, it's at work, and I never did get it out of work, and it's all but impossible getting the Dawson these days, and I'm not even going to try. I made, for this particular assignment, something students could borrow and I could demonstrate. And it was those fairy lights, a particularly robust set, and basically a broomstick, big long broomstick. And what I did is I just wrapped those lights around the broomstick the whole length, taped battery pack, good solid battery pack at the bottom. And now I have a junior lightsaber, and I could wave that. And I and the students had a lot of fun in the small studio working with that. There was only one of them, and I would pass them around. But if you happen to have a lightsaber, because you're a Star Wars nut, this would be an excellent thing to be practicing light painting with. Don't have that? Maybe you got sparklers. Okay. Now, I got these at, where did I get these? Oh, pharmacy. They're for birthdays. They're really meant to stick in a birthday cake. Okay. They're really small and thin. These are not your standard sparklers. And I found out that for what I wanted them for, they're too small, and they sure don't last. I literally took two of them together like that and lit it and tried to light paint. And the light output is just a little too dim, and they literally lasted less than a minute. I didn't time it specifically. So this is not the greatest unless you're really close to the camera. But the regular ones, which are longer, therefore they burn longer, are also much thicker and much brighter. One or two of those at a time, if you're careful, could be used to draw figures in the air, to outline things, to even light things up, waving them back and forth. I will get to examples in just a minute. However, this one failed, so you don't get an example of these. Guess I'll save them for July 4th. Okay, I tried with, I don't have it with me, but I literally have an LED light stick for the garage, which I charged. That worked, but I had problems with it. It was turning on and off by itself. Or well, I was turning off by itself. There's a short in there somewhere. I did manage to get one shot, which I'll show you. And then I went to the dangerous stuff. No, not dynamite. This is a standard road flare. I packed them in my car all the time, just in case. It's a safety measure. Now, I pulled them out of the car and realized, you know, it's about time I changed them. These things age, and they become a little unpredictable as they get really old. These are about 1.5 years, could be 2 years old. And after I lit one, and you will see, that one has already been lit, and I managed to put it out before it burned down too far. I noticed the characteristics of a relatively aged flare, which is that it spits a lot of burning material, which new flares generally do not. It's just a reddish flame about this long, and you don't get fireworks off of it. The older they get, the more it tends to spit. And that's especially dangerous because those pieces that fall off can start fires. This can start a fire. It is fire. So while I demonstrated a few things on the video that I've created, actually through Zoom, but I haven't put up yet. I did them in the forest. This I did not do in the forest. My forest has got dry pine needles everywhere, several inches. The last thing I need is forest fire. So I went to my driveway. If you play with fire, whether it happens to be this or steel wool that's burning or anything that's dangerous, you've really got to think out your site ahead of time and go, where can I do this where I won't light things on fire? And if I do by accident, can I put it out? What do I bring? I had a fire extinguisher sitting in the driveway just in case, because on either side I have the pine needles. No, I didn't start any fires. The problem with these guys too, many road flares contain chemicals which generate oxygen. That means that it's its own oxygen source, which means you can't dunk it in water and put it out. It will continue to burn after you dunk it. And when you take it out, it's still lit. This one, I actually didn't try it because there is a second way to put out road flares. Other than leaving them by the side of the road, and you've all seen that, the white trail, stick-like look of ash on the road and burned asphalt. These are not meant to be handheld, by the way. That's another danger. You can singe your clothing, you can do it the wrong way when you're trying to light them. I simply grounded, I tapped it, and then I ground it out. I could have just put it down on the driveway and let it burn, but I wanted to see if I could snuff it, and I managed to snuff it. But if you're going to go this route, and of course, once again, for safety's sake, I hope you don't, water may not put out the flare itself. It'll put out any fire it starts, but it may not put out the flare. These are just, they come through to a package. That was in my car. And once this whole thing is, this quarantine is lifted enough, I'm going to replace them because, like I said, they happen to be pretty old. Now, I'll just let you know, if you're going to go ahead and do it, the proper way to hold this is not vertical. It's sideways or slightly down, again, because there's a possibility of dripping material. You never hold it up here, of course. Seems there is, on most of them, a halfway mark on the flare. If they must be, and you've even seen police waving them, you know, it's not recommended, but it can be done. Should never, ever consider holding them once they've reached near the black line. At that point, you absolutely are running a real risk. You got to put them down. Now, when you want to light them, well, mine's burned away. There's a bump on top, much like a match head, and the cap itself has a striker. Hold it like this, strike it away from you, not close to you. Have the flare pointed slightly away from you too. All of this to make sure that you don't get in the way when it suddenly ignites. Now, the other reason I knew they were old, it took about 4 or 5 tries like this to actually light it. And usually, I've had some experience with these guys. Usually it takes only 1 or 2. But I kept this one to show you. That will be disposed of. Okay, that's fire danger number 1. And the second one, well, actually, I showed you the sparklers first. Those 2 can be dangerous. They can burn yourself, singe your clothing, and start fires in grass and God knows where else. But the flare is definitely much more dangerous. Now I'm going to go on to one that's even, I consider even more dangerous, and that's that stainless steel. I think I described it in class, but if I haven't, and you'll see lots of examples, and you can find out how to do it. So Once again, the first thing you've got to do is find an area where you will not start fires. Outside, none of this fire indoors. A big, giant parking lot that's empty would be my first guess, and there are a lot of them around. A beach with sand. Failing that, green grass, preferably after a rain, so it's all wet. Bring a fire extinguisher, even if it's just a little tiny guy, one-time use guy for this. Now, the basic setup is simply to grab a metal egg whisk or beater. It has to be metal because the fire will, of course, eat plastic instantly. And you have to have very fine steel wool that you can find at the hardware store. And steel wool is graded from 4-0 down to 0, I believe. What you need is the finest, which is 4-0. I think it'll work with 3-0 if that's all you can find, 3-0 steel wool, but you're better off with 4. It's very, very fine steel wool, used for fine finishing and other things. What we're going to do, and you're going to end up buying more than you absolutely need, so hopefully you have craft projects. We're going to take this egg whisk, and this egg whisk should have a loop on the handle, normally to hang it somewhere, because we're going to attach a string or a piece of twine to that, long enough so that we can twirl it without hitting the ground, but not too short. We don't really want to be any closer to that than we have to. So once it gets going, it's going to spit sparks. Believe me, a lot. What you do is you take a clump of steel wool and you push it to the inside of the egg beater and you fluff it out to get airspace in there. That helps, dense steel wool does not ignite easily. If you can fluff it out inside the cavity of the egg beater, and you have the string attached and you're in a safe place, got a fire extinguisher, then you need to be able to light it. And there are a couple ways of doing that. People who do this a lot, build up a catalog of shots, steel wool shots, will use a 9-volt battery. All they do is push the battery terminal into the steel wool. It shorts it out, starts glowing, and it will literally just start to catch fire. At that point, you pull it away, the battery, and start twirling it. And believe me, the steel wool, because of the rush of air through it, will suddenly explode into, create a tremendous amount of sparks. This is your light source. It's very bright. You're twirling it. It's throwing sparks off in all directions. You're doing this. Wear safety glasses you don't want, or glasses are a secondary thing like I'm wearing. You don't want any of this in your eye, for God's sake. Wear dirty old clothes that, if they get singed with a spark, you're not ruining your finest tuxedo doing this. And of course, we've already said that you've got to be in a pretty fire safe place. And it will last. It depends on how big the egg beater is, how much steel wool you put in there, etc. But it will last about 10 to 15 seconds before it starts to die down. And it dies down rather quickly. Now, if it's an all steel egg beater, you can use it multiple times, trying for more steel wool, trying for different situations. So that is a very common way of creating figures in air. The actual color of it is a yellow-orange. That's natural. People have been known to put chemicals in the steel wool to change the color, but unless you're a chemist, don't bother. You can put copper powder in there and you get one color, and you know, this is getting way too far advanced, but just let it be known that it's out there. Something else that can be used that's not dangerous, a flashlight. Maybe you've got some colored material that you can wrap over the lens, which will change its color, preferably translucent, like a filter. You can just tape it in place. I was reaching for something else. Actually, can't remember. Maybe it'll come to me in just a little bit. All right. Those are the basics. Remember that I have a video with voiceover of me trying to do this. On the Mio, yeah, it was a Mio I sent you. You got one of my final results. That one was with the Rode Flare. And it's already edited. This is not what it looked like when it came out of the camera. So I think what we need to do is call up the image and do a little editing so you can see what was done to it to enhance it. And almost invariably, it's more than just a little bit of cropping that needs to be done. Okay, so I'm going to share my, well, actually before I do that, I'm going to go out there and see if I can get Pixlr up on screen and ready to go. So just give me a minute and then I'll be back. It's also possible that at this point, before we go into it, I will ask for some questions. Okay, so Pixlr.com. Hello. .com. Let's go there. Yeah, I think I told the class last week where we did some editing, although I edited it with Lightroom. Let me get back to the meeting and share the screen. Let's see. Wow, we're up to 16 people. Good. All right, before I do that, to this point, does anybody have any questions they would like to ask about this assignment? All you need to do is unmute your microphone and ask. You can always mail me. Now, I've been behind online and everything else, but I'm trying to stay current au courant with Mio. It's just the way it's fallen. So if you think of a question after this, after we wrap up, by all means, mail me with a question. If it's a good general question that I think everybody should know the answer to, I'll try to bounce it back out to all of my students. Excuse me. Okay, share the screen. Start broadcast. 2, 1. All right, so you should see a very boring screen there. And there we go. I hope everybody sees that. We are at Pixlr.com. They've really revamped the site. There's a new generation of Pixlr online. Their whole front page is, yeah, quite changed. You can see at the bottom it says looking for an older editor. Now, Playful Pixlr X, you can play with it, but don't use it. It's too simple. It literally is too simple. Advanced Pixlr E. We're going to try that. Boom. Now, they load some basic images they have on their database. Now, you don't have to sign up for Pixlr, as I've said before. If you do, it's free, and you get a little bit of storage space, but we all have our own. And if you actually want to join Pixlr, there's a pricing plan, and you can do that. Now, when you're faced with this, and we're not going to log in, I don't even have an account at Pixlr. I use it for the class. So we need to open an image, not create new. Create new is something a little different. So we're going to open image and see the choice it gives you. Take photo, nah. Browse, or photo library. and recent for me. And okay, where is, all right, we're going to start with this one. Actual size, choose, okay, I wanted actual size. I generally want to edit with the highest resolution I can, so they do give you choose image size, and I usually say actual size. Any of the other choices will actually cut the size down, throw some pixels out in a compression scheme. And although it doesn't make a big difference, sometimes it does. So we're just going to take it at actual size, resize. No, I don't like that. Look, it says the image you selected is very large, 6,000 by 4,000. That's because it was taken my Fuji camera. And I have found that even Pixlr Online with a decent connection can handle that higher resolution. They insist on it, although you can and tell them, don't ask me about this again, but that's only good for your session because I haven't signed in, I don't have an account, but we're gonna call up something else. 6,000 by 4,000. I'm going to, see even Ultra HD, well, I guess I'll go with that. It's just simpler. It's almost the same resolution. Oh, no, it's not quite. See, new size down there in pixels, 3840 by 2560. I'm going to try just deleting that and put in the full size, 6,000 by 4,000. See, all I had to do was just touch the box and it already sized it accordingly. I'm going to apply. That's interesting. I'm getting a background that is showing me transparency. All right, so that didn't work for some reason. So I'm going to file, open image, because this one, and we'll go to the photo library. Hello, and we'll start all over again. And we'll start with this one. Done. Oh, there we go. Don't know why I took the wrong approach. Now, notice that in Pixlr, you can have several images open. I have two. The useless one here, I just had to touch the tab and what I really wanted. So I don't want this other one. I'll just click on the X, or in my case, I have a touch screen on my iPad, so there it is. So this is pretty much straight out of the camera. This was done with that LED light stick. Now, you don't see a whole lot, but you do see some things. And this definitely can be improved. But before we do that, let's take a look at what we see. This was done, about half an hour after sunset, maybe a little bit longer. There's still light in the sky, which separates the trees. That's a good thing. What we do see is some figures in the air. These are streaks. And of course, we see some very white streaks, almost in the middle. That was when the light stick was pointed directly at the camera. And then you'll dimly see nearer the camera to the left, bushes and some leaves. And that's because I advanced toward the camera and used the light stick to light them up, but they're very dim. Now, this is okay, but it's not really very exciting. I'm not saying it's a great shot, but we definitely need to do some work on it. So let's begin. Now, the first thing is cropping, really. You're going to Instagram. Now, there are ways around this, but let's keep life simple. Instagram prefers a 4:5 crop. This can be done with your cropping tool. If you see on the left-hand side, there happens to be a whole series of tools. And right now, the pointed arrow is highlighted on the left-hand side. Below that is a lasso. That's the cropping tool below the lasso, the two L's. I touch that. Yeah, and you see, I have it, well, like I could tell Pixlr not to do this, but it's good to see. When you touch tool, it'll tell you exactly what it is, and if there's a keyboard shortcut. So you don't even have to touch the icon. You can just hit C on your keyboard and you'll be fine. All right, so let's, all right, let's see. I can also, oh, I can find it on this, get out of it. If I made a mistake and touched the wrong tool, I just have to go back up and touch another tool and it's gone. And there, I hit C on my keyboard and immediately it went there. So you see the cropping handles all the way around, in the corners and on the sides. But now I have a free crop. You know, this basically means I can grab a corner or whatever, and I can make it anything I want, right? There's no constraint. That's really not what I want. If you take a look on top where all the tool options are, you'll see there's a whole bunch. What we're interested in is the constraint one. And right now, free is highlighted. Now, I don't want size, I want ratio. Now, they don't have a drop-down list of ratios that are commonly used for cropping. And it comes canned with 1:1, which is square. Now, what I want is a 4:5 or a 5:4. This happens to be what? A landscape orientation that I shot it. So the width has to be bigger than the height. So I'm going to tap in there and delete the 1 and go 5. Now, see, that's a 5:1 because I haven't gotten to the next box. Interesting crop, but not what I want. Go to the second box. Go in there and go 4. There we go. Now we are in what Instagram really likes. People are always worried, Instagram crops my photos automatically. I hate it. Well, one of the reasons is that you're not pre-cropping for Instagram. And second of all, when you go to post, you're not expanding the image area. And there is a control specifically for that on Instagram. I think most of you know it by now. The minute you say yes to this photo, I want it posted, and you see that in the dialog box, there should be in the lower left-hand corner an arrow icon, a double-headed, pointing outward. Click on that and you'll see your whole image. Even I forgot that. Okay, so here we are. Now, because I've constrained it to a 5:4, I can still grab a corner, but it's all proportional. Okay, doesn't matter. I can try grabbing, look at that, I grabbed the side. All right, now you'll notice that there's space. Generally speaking, when it initially does the crop, it's a little hard to see because on this image, most of the pixels are black or close to it. But we have some extra image area outside to the left and to the right on this landscape. If it were a portrait crop, you'd have a little extra top or bottom that's going to be excluded because my camera shoots in 3:2, and this is not exactly the same ratio as 4:5. So you can play with it just a little bit, and you notice the rule of thirds is coming into play. We have the grid, so I could use it. See, I don't want to crop out the bushes here. And there's really nothing interesting. Well, there's some sky on the right-hand side in the upper right, but I've also got sky in the middle, so that sky in the corner, not that important. So we'll include the bushes because I find that's a lot more important. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not actually going to shrink it. I mean, I could and try to place things right on the third line and so forth. But I don't want to throw away too many pixels. So, and I definitely want to include the bushes in that, which does constrain me. So I think that's about right. Whoops. No, I'll leave it in there because we'll edit it out and I'll show you something else. So when you've got it where you want, you can actually see how many pixels are left up in the options horizontal bar above the picture, width and height in pixels. From 4,000, or sorry, from 6,000 to 4,000, we're down to 3,400 by 27. Now, again, it's not the final size that I want posted, which is even less pixels. But while you're editing, you want to keep as many pixels as possible. It just makes the whole job easier without going into a long explanation. So that looks pretty good. Just hit return on your keyboard. There's the new picture, cropped. We haven't done anything with tonality. We're definitely going to do that. Okay, so we've done a basic crop. We might go back and recrop if we're really picky, but no, we're not going to do that. Okay, so what next thing I want to do is simply tonality. You know, it's too dark overall, and I need to raise that up. Now there is a magic brush, if you will. It's always worth trying because you can always undo it. Notice, oh, by the way, on the right-hand side, standard 3 panels. Beyond the image, navigate, layers, history. We don't need layers. We're not playing with layers. There, I can fold them up. I can't actually get, well, I might be able to get rid of them, but I'm not going to worry about it. Leaving us navigate and history. History is important because that allows you to step back one or more things that you've done. Like there's open image without the crop. There's the crop. It's a great way of doing an A/B test. What we're going to do here is look for levels. Why? Because there's a histogram in there. Unlike Lightroom, it doesn't automatically display a histogram up on the screen. I really wish it did. But since levels is a command that I do use, even in my own editing, we'll go to adjustment. Oh, look at all those. Now there's auto adjust. Oh yeah, I did talk about the magic wand or the magic brush. That's basically auto adjust. You can try to have Pixlr, like other programs have this too, analyze the whole thing and do their best. Sometimes it's just a joke, but sometimes not. It's also essentially here in the tool panel on the left-hand side. See the dotted square right on top of the tool panel next to the highlighted arrow. Just below that, I believe that is the magic wand. Let me see. Oh, no, no, no. That's something else. Don't want to mess with that. Okay, so we'll go back to adjustment. There is an auto adjust. Let's see what happens. Not much. Okay, in this case, it didn't really help. Sometimes it helps a lot, your image, to hit auto adjust. Does all the heavy lifting for you. You still have to adjust things, but you're well on the way. In this case, it's a joke. So I'm not going to keep auto adjust. I'm going back to crop because I literally see nothing changed. And let it build the history from that and leave auto adjust off. It's a useless thing. Let's go back and find levels. Levels is down about 2/3 of the way. Below curves, above threshold says levels. Boom. There's my histogram. Now, normally you're supposed to be able to move these bloody things. And I'm not getting that. And I don't know why. it may be a control that I need to set, because I like to move the panel that just came up in front of the picture aside so I can see more of the picture. But I have to investigate further. All right, so what we see here, a couple of things we can safely, ignore. We're really only concerned about the circled white dot, which means it's adjusting all colors, all tones, as opposed to individual red, green, and blue. That's getting real fancy. One could do it. And we're not interested in this black to white bar underneath. I'll show you what it does, but it's useless to photographers. It has some use if the image is going to be printed, like in a booklet, a book, or so forth, but I've never used it. What's interesting is the histogram here and the 3 sliders that are underneath. Shadow slider to the left, midtone, and of course highlights. And what the histogram is telling us, and what it's telling us is the vast majority of pixels in this image are black. See that huge spike goes right off the graph. Steeply drops, and there is just to the right of that black slider a fair number of pixels that are dark, very dark, near black, but not there. And then there's basically a thin line all the way to the edge on the right-hand side. And that means that, yes, we do have some white pixels. We do have some mid-tone gray or colored pixels that are in the middle of the tonal range, but not very many. And of course, that makes sense if you remember the picture. What I want to do is stretch the lower tones a bit. I don't have to worry about a black, I got one. I don't have to worry too much about a white. I've got some, basically the LED wand. Literally what I want to do is simply grab the midtone slider. This is a bit of an unusual histogram. It's not incorrect, and it is in fact correct for the shot that's there. And I want to move this. Now, if I move it in one direction, you see how it brightens everything up? Well, until it becomes. By the way, you'll notice there's blur here. This was a 30-second exposure and there was wind. So it's not that I can't focus. Things were moving in front of the camera, not just me. So you see the bushes and even some of the greenery there. And that's too much. First of all, I don't want to show you the out of focus, or they're not out of focus, blurred stuff. And second of all, it loses the atmosphere. But I do want to bring it up somewhat. So I might bring it up that far. Now, how much is up to you? Now that's moving it left. Moving it right does the opposite, and that's not where we want to be. So for now, I'll leave it there. I can revisit it. By the way, on a lot of these command boxes, if you will, like for levels, down in the lower left corner, you'll see little icons, black, white. That's a before, after. Before I apply the levels change and after. And all you got to do is press it. Oh, that's right. It doesn't work on my iPad. It doesn't. But with your mouse, you should be able. Yeah, it says hold down. And this is what I get, which is ridiculous. It's like it's not on there. It's like if I held it down somewhere else. No, I don't know. Doesn't work for me, but with a mouse, it probably would. And I'm on an iPad. So. And it'll instantly shift to the shot before you did the levels. But we can do it some other way. Okay, since this doesn't work, I'm going to say apply the blue button. There we go. And now we go to history. And this is the third step I've taken, levels. So I'm going to go back to crop. There you go. And levels. It's basically an undo redo, which you could also find in the menu system, but I find history is the best way. So you can judge, did I go too far? Not far enough. Was it dramatic? Yeah, it was pretty dramatic for this shot. Now you can see the S, sort of a backwards S curve that I made with the light in the trees, you can see them more sharply defined. And that's because the LED stick has an LED flashlight head, but it's also a bar with LEDs, a strip of them. And the strip made this S curve. And the brighter ones down here is when the flashlight was pointed directly toward the camera as I moved it, and things in between. So that's, that's not too bad. Not only that, but we gathered some color in the trees. Now, I must say, if you look, I'm just going to highlight this. I guess I'll do it this way. Oh, shut up. Yeah, I know. How do you fold in? Oh, you tap it. Okay. I want to draw your attention to this area here. So I drew that there. Notice there's a little bit of color there. There's also a little bit over here in the trees. It's kind of an orange color. This actually comes from 1 yard light that's in the forest, which is a yellow orange, mostly yellowish looking, but it photographs as orange. Let's see, delete. No, that isn't. I get rid of my selection here. This is actually not the, whoops. Do not want that. I just put a hole in my image. Okay, I'll just go in history before I did marquee, but I wanted to show you that. See, I accidentally screwed my image by hitting the wrong button, and it cleared the square. The square basically is telling this program where I want something done, and I accidentally hit a delete button. Well, I thought it would get rid of the square. It did, but not the way I wanted. So I'm going back to levels. There we go. And let's see. I do want to strengthen my colors. I can do it with my tool icons, or I can do it with adjustment where it actually spells out the thing. Now, one of the things I want to do is intensify the colors, vibrance, or it might even be under color balance. Let's take a look. No, so we're going to cancel that. We may get back to it in a little bit. Vibrance, single slider. Make the colors more vibrant. Okay, I still can't move this stupid box. I'm going to find out how. Move the slider over. Now you can take it too far, but in this particular case, too far, which is 100%, is actually not too bad from what I can see. I don't think I'll take it. The greens are starting to get a little fluorescent, so about there. And I'm looking at the oranges, orange and back. It's nice to have an opposing color there. I'll say apply. Okay, and I can go before, like that, and like that. Now, it's not a huge change, but it's something that you may find will work quite nicely. I can go to, oh, that's not what I want either. Okay, so let's continue going up to adjustment. Because what I want to do is play with the temperature and tint, other color controls. You can see that this gives you a dialog or a command box with blue yellow slider and a magenta green slider. Now I noticed in the tree to the right that when I brighten it up, it's very greenish. Now my trees do have some moss on it, but not quite like that. I may want to throw some magenta in there. Now I'm doing it everywhere. So that will probably increase the orange of the trees that are reflecting the yard light, but it may also kill the green in the bushes here. But let's, I mean, we have time, let's play. No, that's too much. But you do see it change. How much would I, all right. Maybe that, no, a whole lot, 14. Now we get a blue yellow slider. Let's play with it. I don't know. It may not be of any help to us, but let's see what it does. Well, it really warms, ooh, it brought the orange out a lot. It was a little too warm for me. Might take it in that direction. The other direction, well, that's a whole different look. I'm not to say that that's wrong. It's not what I'm going for, but you could make that choice. I'm going to stay on the warm side because it helps the orange over there. About there, I guess. Apply. Now, any of these, you can go back and readjust if you want. If later in the adjustment session, you revise, you go, you know something, that's too warm. You can always go back and change it before you save it. Okay, so we've done color. Through levels, we've done contrast. We've done cropping, 3 C's. Remember, I can only remember 4. I got to get a hold of Martin Coles and get a hold of the whole thing. All 5 of those edits. Now, sharpness with a C. That's not how you spell it, but that's how you remember the 5 C's, except the 5th one I can't remember. Almost everything comes out of a camera can be sharpened a little bit. Unless you happen to have your camera control set to high sharpening, in which case I would suggest you don't do that. If you have that capability in camera controls or software, I would put it actually on low sharpening. Mine are actually usually on none. And they come out kind of soft, but that's because I edit everything. And I have far more control over sharpness on an editing program than I ever do in a camera. This one definitely, and not because of the blur. There's not much I can do about the blur. But we go here, and we don't have it here. Okay, so it's not there. And I don't think they have it in filter I. Although they do, but these are all or nothing things. That's right, in Pixlr we may not have quite the control that I thought. Certainly in Lightroom or Photoshop or other programs, you definitely have a lot more control. You have sharpen, clarity, blur, more blur, vignette, yes, one of my favorites. And is there anything else down here? No, not really. So we've got a couple of things that can create sharpness. One of them is contrast. If you don't have enough contrast on an image, if it's short tonal range, say for instance you have no black, no white, just middle tones, just getting to a black and stretching the tones a bit will make it look sharper. But let's start with clarity. Now, clarity is an interesting thing that came out in Lightroom about 4 years ago, I think, and other programs have adapted it. And really all it is, although it affects other tones, it adds contrast. It stretches tones in the midtones, makes them clearer, if you will, because of the added contrast. And it does appear to sharpen things. So, I mean, you can rack it way over. And now in this particular case, we can almost get away with 100%. Yeah. A lot of times you can't. The picture looks really weird, but under these lighting conditions, it's fine. Now, I'll give you a little tip. Let's say you're doing a portrait. And you find that it's a little too sharp. You see every wrinkle in the face, every pock mark, every blemish, and it's just too much for whatever reason. To smooth skin tones out, of course, we're using it on the entire image. You can go to negative clarity. And it softens everything, or appears to. Now, in this particular shot, we're not getting the effect real strong, but you'll see it. I think I'm going to keep it at 100. It might be just a bit much, but it shows well on screen. What I'm going to do is zoom in just a bit. Ooh, move up. Because when you do sharpening, you have to be careful not to do over sharpening, and you want to be zoomed in a bit to see if some of these weird artifacts are starting to show up. Hello. How much? Oh, I hit sponge. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we'll go back to clarity. No, I keep hitting sponge here. Okay, this is before I added the clarity. And take a look, we're zoomed in. It doesn't actually give us the strength. Okay, and here's after I added the clarity. Woo. Actually, I do believe it's a little bit too much now that I'm zoomed in, but you see how it looks like it sharpened it? So since I believe it's a little over sharpened, a couple of the brighter areas now have become white dots and they're distracting. I'm going back. Actually, I don't know why these sponge things are in here and I shouldn't, I know why. Let me just change something there. Okay, shut up. I'm going back to temperature and tint. There you go, in my history. And I'm going off in a different direction. I'm going to go right to clarity, and all these other commands that are grayed out will not be listed because I'm building a new history from when I did temperature and tint. So believe it was adjustment, curves levels. Oh, now I've forgotten. Oh, maybe it was filter. Yeah, exactly. It was filter. Clarity again. And I'm not going to rack it all the way across. I'm going to rack it here. Or, even rack it that far. Rack it about that far. Okay, so I've gained some sharpness. I probably need to go sharpen. Okay, they do have a slider. So I'm zoomed in and I can rack it across. Again, I can probably over sharpen. Yeah, things start looking a little weird. It's easier on a shot that isn't taken under such extreme lighting conditions to judge whether you've over sharpened. I'll add just, I'll say 39%, say apply. And okay, so it doesn't want to go out. Yeah, there we go. Now in Pixlr, that's about as much as we can do. It isn't super fine control, but we definitely sharpened the thing up. And I think you can probably see from temperature and tint, I go back in history, then I go to sharpen, and it is sharper. Subtly at full screen, but if you zoom in, you'll see that's pretty good. Now I'm going to be running out of time, but you see this is quite a bit different than the original image, which is coming up on the screen. There's our original image. Didn't look like much, did it? Didn't look like it was worth saving. But we managed to save it. Come on. Okay, we're working on a big image. There you go. So you see, that's quite nice, quite interesting. It intrigues the viewer a little bit. We've got something in the foreground that's lit and a background, and we've got an opposing color over here, which is the warm tone in the upper left-hand corner to contrast against mostly cooler tones. So I'm going to leave this one, and I'm going to call up the other one. And now this is the one where I played with fire. Open image from my photo library. Now I sent you, well, I guess I'll open both, that one and that one. Oh, it won't let me open up. Okay. That's the image I sent you. But that's not what it looked like when it came out of camera. So I'm going to open up the original out of camera image. Library, recent, and it's this one here. Okay, done. So that's what it pretty much looked like coming out of camera as a JPEG. This could be submitted this way, but it can also be improved. And I did work, all right, which order, on it a bit to go from here to here. You'll see that aside from bringing in color on the trees, I also got some stuff in the foreground on the asphalt of my driveway. You also see my ghost image. The flare is extremely bright, and it lit up a lot of things, including myself. Now, one trick for those who do often light painting like this, they dress all in black. Heck, they even put in a black mask or whatever. You don't want light tones on your body, clothes, or anything to reflect light if you want to disappear. Now, I was between, I was behind the flare. And the flare was, for the most part, pointed toward the camera or the bushes on the left-hand side. And you see, I'm still lit up. You see ghost images. Now, nothing wrong with ghost images. Sometimes they're really cool. But I wasn't dressed in black. Dark, but not black. So, how do we get there? Boom, really quickly. All right, we're here. And once again, I want to do levels. I want to go to adjustment. Actually, before I go there, do I really want that? Yeah, I guess I do. Once again, you see that the histogram shows us we have those tones all the way from black, and there's still some that are a lot of pixels making up the image that are black. And there's a fair number that are near black, really, but those are really like the dark reds, If I actually hit the red button here, you'll see the red channel says, yeah, look at all that. Green channel, not so much, but that is a blue channel. But let's not confuse things. This is the general channel, all tones. And again, I might want to play with the black end of the histogram, but mainly the midtones. Make it brighter. See, you can do it that way. Now, having done that, there's an awful lot of mistiness I can see showing up in the image. I might want to go and move the blacks a little bit to get a little more contrast. By the way, that's my wife calling squirrels. She feeds them off our back porch. I'm going to leave it there, apply. Boom. Okay. Now, how did I get the green up there? Well, that's tricky. I did it in Lightroom. There really isn't any green to speak of there. And I'm not, let's see. I haven't actually done this in Pixlr. In Lightroom, it's real easy to use what's almost like called a mask. And that allows you to isolate a particular area and then change things in that area. And now somebody's mowing their lawn. Okay, I could maybe do it this way. All right, I'm going to use the marquee, which is a square tool. I could use the lasso, but I'll use the marquee. Now, if I draw a marquee here that encompasses the top third of the image and change its color balance, we'll see green, but we'll see it in a perfect square. So I want to feather the edge of this. And you can see in the control strip just above, feather. And I need to tap something in here. And you definitely need to, I'll try 50, I'll try 60 pixel feather. Now that number really depends upon the resolution of your image, but I'm going to try it. And now that it's going to draw as feathered, I will start in the corner and try to draw it across. Yeah, like there. Now I don't see the feathering, but I would if I start changing. Now this is a selection box. You can also do a freeform one with the lasso tool, just in the toolbox near the top. But I'm going to stick with this one. hopefully I've feathered enough, but maybe not. And now that I've done it, I've essentially told the program, whatever I do, I want you to do it only in this area, not the entire picture. This is local adjustment. Let's do an adjustment. Let's do temperature and tint. And there is magenta green slider, so let's move it over. Doesn't do much. Doesn't really do that. How about some yellow? Or how about some blue? Nope. Now see, I did this in Lightroom using different tools. Okay, I don't like that, so we'll try a different way. How about color balance? Midtones. Well, the area encompassed are shadows and midtones. No highlights in that box. The other thing is that in an image, whether you do a selection like I just did, or whether you're doing the entire image, the most visual change will be when you start with midtones. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, that's going in the wrong direction. There we go there. I want to kill the red. Not getting much. Let's go to shadows and do the same thing. There we go. All right. Now, let's not be ridiculous about it. And I can see my feathering isn't all that great. I just want a suggestion of the green of the pines. And kill some of the red. Okay, whoa, whoa, okay. Now it's also a bit too light. I'm seeing a weird effect in the branches. This is also, okay, I'm gonna say apply. Now the box is still there. And the reason is that I think my feathering is too shallow. There's still gonna be a cut line. So let's see if I can do it afterwards. I certainly hope so. Well, maybe, maybe not. How far can I actually do it? About that far? Well, whether it's a good one or not. Okay, all right, all right. Now, I guess just return. No, not sure how I get rid of that box there. Not in Pixlr. Could be, let's see, where I'm on a Mac. Command. Oh, interesting. No. Oh, those are general Mac commands, Mindy. No, that bookmark things. There's a way to get rid of selections. I haven't found out what it is, obviously on Pixlr. No, that's a different selection. Undo. Okay, we'll leave it there. You get the general idea. I'm not asking you to necessarily do this, especially since I cannot demonstrate it. The other selection tool is the lasso, which I have, which allows you to freeform select certain things. And it won't work. Oh, there it did. Yeah. So you can draw, and I'm drawing with a pen on my screen. You come close to the start and release. It draws a straight line to the start. So now you can see that my green is cut off too much. I'll have to work on that in Pixlr. You see the feathered edge just, I'll just highlight it. You see that? That's too abrupt, too unnatural. And the way around that would be to feather it a lot more than that. So you're gonna have to play around. In Lightroom, I know exactly what how to get there and do it really well. And that's what I did with the one that I sent you. You get the general idea. And where were we when we came out? Because we're running out of time here. That's the original out of camera image. Acceptable. But better. well, if you ignore the transition from green to red, a feathered, a real soft transition from green to red would look natural. I just haven't achieved it here. I got there pretty much by the one I sent you in Mio, but that was through Lightroom. So you see that when they first come out of the camera, your light painting stuff can look rather drab, boring, almost like a throwaway. Let's not basically do it, throw it out. But sometimes they're definitely worth working on. You can salvage them and make them much more impactful. This one suffered from lack of any other color, because at least one other color is nice. So why the green? Well, it matches what those pine trees look like. Well, of course, not the trunk, but who's going to really notice? So you see how we can bump it up. And I hope that you will spend some time after you've done whatever light painting efforts that you have in editing, in order to, because you can really salvage some shots that you think are garbage. But it is definitely trial and error. Light painting, until you do a lot of it, and I have not either, is experimentation. Everything's experimentation. The right exposure, the right position. How can I get into the frame? Well, you see on these, I had set this one for 30-second exposure, but I put a timer on it too. I said to my camera, I'll press the shutter button. You wait 10 seconds before you open the shutter for 30 seconds. That gives me time to get to the front of the driveway and hopefully light the flare. And on my camera, the Fuji, I can only go to 10 seconds, I believe. There are other settings, but for a timed timer, 10 seconds is the longest, I believe. But what happens is a diode lights up on the front of the camera, so you know the timer is going. And then just before the shutter fires, it not only beeps, but the light flashes, so you know to get ready. And even on your cell phone camera app, you will have the ability to set a delayed trigger response. Set it for 10 seconds. If you can set it for a bit longer, that never hurts. You have to be able to get in position if you're doing this yourself. If you're quarantined with somebody, maybe they can help you out. You're the photographer, and they are the person playing with fire. After all, they can catch themselves on fire. Doesn't bother you. I actually don't recommend it, because this, if it's not done properly, can lead to some problems. You'll actually notice on here that there is some dripping fire that fell, I'll circle it, it's right here, off of the flare. You can see that downward dripping thing there. But luckily, it's on asphalt with just a few pine needles, no fire started. But even after I put the flare out by stubbing it out, that little glowing ember that fell was still glowing. So I made sure to go over there, and I had a bucket of water too, by the way, a fire extinguisher and a bucket of water. I was going to try to see if I can put it out in the water. Some flares you can and some you can't, but I actually didn't. I decided I'll try stubbing it out by knocking it on the pavement and then rubbing the end, and that worked. And once that was out, I turned around and I saw a little red glow, and I went, oh yeah, okay. So I went over there and stepped on it, put it out. And I made sure that they were truly out before I left the area. So there you go. Let's see how many people. Stop broadcasting, screen. Yeah, I think so. That's all that really needs to be. And on this one, I can just tap that. And believe it or not, I managed to hold on to a few people. Not everybody, but almost, all the way to the end. Okay, we're going to stop looking at Bob's face. We'll look at the flare and everything else on the table. At this point, does anybody have any questions? Just unmute your microphone. I should be able to hear you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Daniel, go ahead.
It's for the portfolio. Like, are we still doing the proposal, and how are the 5 photos going to work?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. This could be a problem for a few people. In that, there are some students who really don't want to leave their premises any more than they have to. And this could seriously interfere in trying to put together a portfolio. We still need a portfolio at the end. It's the most logical, well, as the college calls it, summative assessment of your skills. However, it will impact a few people who can't get out, don't want to get out, are worried for their health, to actually shoot it. So I'm going to include it in a MEO this week, that if at all possible, try to reassess your subject in light of the pandemic and the quarantine. You are allowed out with proper precautions. No one is preventing you from leaving. However, I understand the situation with some students. You could perhaps do a series of well-lit objects common to households. Make it into more of an abstract series of photographs. Thinking about maybe a little backdrop, an interesting angle in house lighting for things that you have in the house. Not major things like major pieces of furniture, but I'm talking about, hey, even a steam iron plugged in. Very carefully watch that, and making steam. And if you can capture the steam coming out with the right lighting, that's one. In other words, adapting. Maybe you want to do a little, I don't know, like you're illustrating a magazine article. Title of the magazine article is "A Day in the Life of a Quarantined Student." And what you shoot for your 5 images basically illustrates one day under quarantine in your life. How you shoot it, what you shoot, is up to you. But you see, you're kind of turning your thinking sideways to adapt to the situation. Obviously, it's better if you can continue with what your original idea was, but in some cases it's not. But the assignment is still there at the very end. And as I have mentioned to everybody, deadlines, there's only one. And that is June 1st. You'll have to have everything up on your Instagram by June 1st, literally to give me time to look at it and critique it, because just a couple of days later, I got to put the grades into Dawson. I think it's 3 days. I'm not sure. All other deadlines don't make any sense to me at this point, other than don't wait till the last second for everything. I would expect people, however, to wait a fair amount of time toward the end for their 5-image portfolio, because they may always have a better image that they might have a chance to shoot before the end and substitute for one of the 5 to make it a stronger portfolio. Does that pretty much answer what you were looking for?
Yeah, and just for the proposal, we send you a medium, I guess.
Well, yeah, it would be a good idea, just so I get an idea. Also, it is worth 5 points. Yeah, that sort of kind of went by the wayside, but since it's all part of it, and I'm not going to create a new assignment for the course.
Right.
I think that's not fair. Some people at least will take it that way. So yeah, please write me up a paragraph or a couple of sentences saying this is the theme. Now, for anybody who's still here with me today, if you had a theme that you'd already chosen, already started shooting for, and it got all screwed up because of the quarantine, you don't have to put in another text statement. Just if you have to change, and sometimes people change just because it doesn't work out. You know, They think they got a great idea. Oh, this will make a great 5-image portfolio, a little mini story. They start working on it. And either the inspiration doesn't come or the results don't come. And they go, no, this is not working out. I'm wasting my time. I'd really rather shoot cars. Okay. Make it interesting. Don't just give me 5 cars. Give me a car or 2 in beautiful lighting if you can get it. Get me some close-ups of that beautiful sports car. Maybe it's just the chrome and the red brake assembly in the wheel. You know, that sort of thing. Mix it up so it's interesting. Not always the same idea, same approach. People have changed after the statement is what I'm saying, and that's fine. You don't have to issue another statement. That was there primarily to get people early on to think about this really quickly so that they didn't start thinking a week before it had to be submitted, because 99 times out of 100, that portfolio won't have enough thought and enough effort to really be worth submitting. Okay? Any other questions at this point? Oh, one other thing I want to say is that aside from the Zoom video, I should stop recording. It's only recording my voice. Well, I can cut that short later. I'll edit this and put it up online. The other thing is that I think I may have time to do some very short videos, not these Zoom videos, you know, like 1 minute or 2 minute tips, either on specific assignment material or a particular approach. So you're going to start seeing stuff coming up real soon on Layup. These Zoom conferences, edited, possibly some other video and other documents. Okay, if nobody else has any questions.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I wanted to know, do we have until the end of the semester to submit all the assignments?
June 1st, which is actually after the end. The official end that Dawson is holding to right now is May 26th. And then after that are of course, final exams, which many of you will have to deal with. What I've done is extend beyond the last official date of classes to June 1st into the next week. It's not ideal because you're in the middle of exams, but we have to finish it up at some time. And Dawson is expecting grades right after midterms are finished. So I have set a date of June 1st for everything to be up on your, hello, my brain isn't working, not enough coffee, Instagram account for the class. Does that answer it?
There's no late penalties?
No, there are no late penalties. Under the circumstances, that would be kind of ridiculous. We have to be flexible here.
Okay.
We've never gone through this. I've been teaching for 40 years at Dawson. I have never seen a set of circumstances like this. It's fascinating, but the work involved in trying to adapt, it's not just the teachers, it's the administration and the computer guys, most of all, setting things up and trying things that are failing. And it's amazing. But you see, I don't think we'll be back in session this semester at all.